Welcome to TAVA Talks,
where there's real teens, real voices, and real change. And
we are your hosts, Lulu Roman
and Deanna Lynch.
Today we are here with Dr. Wilson.
I'm a pediatric surgeon at the University of Rochester. I do surgery on kids from the time of their birth all the way up to age 16. And we also are the pediatric trauma surgeons. And then a big component of my job is research as well.
What inspired you to be a part of this team to study violence?
That's a really good question. So I did my training in general surgery and pediatric general surgery in St. Louis. And St. Louis is a town with a lot of economic and racial disparities. And we saw a lot of violent trauma, both when I was a resident working on adults and then as a fellow working on kids. And after seeing multiple little kids shot and having lifelong consequences from that, I really wanted to make that part of my mission moving forward.
Wow, that's a lot. How did that affect you emotionally, and how did you cope with it?
I think it's hard to take care of particularly violent injuries in children. I find it harder than I did in adults. It takes a toll on the whole team, but we're pretty good about coming together as a team and saying, hey, I had a really rough case and I, had, something bad happen to this kid, and we took care of them to the best of our responsibility, and then we kind of debrief afterwards, and that's really helpful. And, as much as it takes a toll on the sort of healthcare workers that are involved, it's nothing, in the same scope as the toll it takes on the family and the community. And so I also try and keep that in perspective.
And plus how kids are mostly starting the violence as well.
Yeah, we saw a lot of kids shot in St. Louis. Fortunately, we see fewer here, at least on the pediatric side, but there still are too many.
Yeah.
Did you see more in teenagers or children?
Both. I mean, I would say more in teenagers. Teenagers have more access to guns than little kids do, and like you said, there's more often a teenager who is going out and using a gun. Most of the stuff we saw in little kids was either accidental shootings or they're in their home and the home gets shot or things like that.
You had $1 million. How would you spend to prevent gun violence against kids?
That's a really, really good question. That was something that I was hoping to brainstorm with you guys about, because we do lots of research that shows that violence has really long-term effects in, if you're injured as a child in a violent injury, it affects you for years and years and years. And it affects the family and the whole community. But one of the things that I struggle with is how to take that research into the next step. What do I do with it to make it better? And that I find is a much harder question to answer. So I think if I had $1 million, what I would do is get groups of teens like you guys together and say, what can we do? And sprinkle it around to start some programs, and then kind of see what takes hold and see what is successful and what then other cities could kind of copy and make useful in their areas as well.
Yeah, that's what we try to do on our social media campaign. We try to reach out to a lot of different organizations. And they actually reached back out to us, and we were actually planning on collaborating with them on social media. So I feel like that's like a great idea.
Yeah, and I would love to help support that in any way possible. It doesn't really take $1 million.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Right.
That's the point that we're trying to prove.
As long as we all work together, because this is not a one-person job.
Definitely.
It takes a lot of people, so to all come together and to work on this is a good thing. Step in the right direction.
Definitely.
So our big thing we're talking about this month, we have been talking about Stop the Bleed. Are you trained in Stop the Bleed?
I am. I'm a Stop the Bleed instructor.
Oh, wow.
We didn't even know that.
Right.
We didn't even know that. Oh my goodness. Okay, so perfect. Do you think that the Stop the Bleed kids should be taught in school? Like, kids should be trained?
I do. I think that there's, so I can give you an example. When I was a kid, my mother was a paramedic. And one of the things that she taught us growing up was CPR. And that's sort of the equivalent, you know, for medical things, CPR, and for trauma and violent injuries, stop the bleed. They're kind of equivalent. They're the first thing that the bystander can do to help make it better or help the patient from getting worse. And there's no reason why you can't teach a smart 8-year-old or a smart 12-year-old how to apply a tourniquet and how to hold pressure, right? And that's the kind of meat of stop the bleed. There are things that you have to be careful about, like you don't want all the 8-year-olds going around putting tourniquets on each other. Like that could be dangerous, but I think that if you did it the right way, just like you teach kids about safe sex and you teach kids about other things like that, I think you could absolutely teach stop the bleed.
Yeah, I agree.
Because we did a presentation about Stop the Bleed to middle schoolers and high schoolers, and I feel like that was a great experience because most of them didn't even know what Stop the Bleed was. So I felt like giving that information to them made them open their eyes of how important it is.
Yeah, and as a teenager myself, I never got taught this in school at all. I didn't even know about it until U of R taught me about it. So I feel like this should be taught everywhere.
I think it's a good thing for everyone to know.
Yeah.
Just like CPR.
Definitely.
Can you tell us a case you had involved with gun violence with kids?
There are many.
Which is not good.
No, it's not good. Some of the ones that sort of stick with you are the ones that either have horrible outcomes, like the child unfortunately dies, or really long-term consequences. So there was a case several years ago of a child that was shot in the chest and needed emergency surgery for a lung injury and got that and survived, but unfortunately the bullet had gone and lodged in the child's spinal cord. And so that kid was paralyzed from the waist down. And that was a really hard case because that kid was in the hospital for a really long time. And you just kind of from our perspective, we just kind of watched it ripple through. You know, first there was this period of the kid not really understanding kind of what had happened. This was I think a 12 or 13-year-old kid, not really understanding what had happened, and then the family starting to understand, and then the kids starting to understand, and just sort of watching it just dramatically change the whole trajectory of the rest of their lives was really horrible and really sticks with me. This was a kid that had an older sibling who was involved with a gang, and the kid had just come out with the older sibling to sort of get to know the friends, and had ended up getting shot on kind of the first night out with that group. And yeah, it was pretty horrible.
Like, a kid that age shouldn't even be involved in that.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that we could, you know, as a society help, is that, you know, 12-year-olds should be, you know, still playing with toys and be kind of pretty innocent. And there are reasons why 11 and 12-year-olds aren't innocent anymore. Either they've got struggles that they're having to grow up fast in their family or their community, and maybe by addressing those kind of things, we can help allow kids to be kids again. That would be really wonderful.
Yeah, and these kids, they're dealing with trauma. They're gonna have to live the rest of their lives with this trauma, with the incident that happened. It would be reminded all the time. So what can we do to prevent these type of incidents from happening? And what, like, support groups or places can we go?
You know, I think there's two ways you can help. I think there are like by hosting or at least getting in contact with support groups by people who have had traumas and trying to kind of break that cycle is really helpful. And then, like I was talking about, if we can figure out how to alleviate some of the stresses, some of the things that make kids turn to gun violence, whether that's, for whatever reason that they're turning, what they're turning to guns, is usually related to some kind of stress in their family, in their community, in their household. And if we're able to impact that and make their lives better in that way, maybe we can, limit their need to turn to gun violence. I mean, everybody's got a reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then it's just figuring out how to make, can we make that better? And it probably can't for everyone, but can we start to make a dent?
Yeah, and then getting them involved in activities, like, get them involved with, like, orchestra, a band.
Or a job.
Yeah,
Keep them off the street.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like, we could work at Seabreeze, and that's so fun. Like, it's a water park. I would love to work there. So, stuff like that, because it'll keep you occupied, and we're always learning and developing, so it's very important to feed our minds with positive.
Yeah, and maybe the job helps alleviate some of the financial stress at home,
mm-hmm.
or other things that are driving going outside the home. Anybody ever wakes up one day and says, I'm going to be involved in gun violence today. I think it's just a series of things that happen that, there are bad choices maybe made along that path, but it's probably related to some unmet need that we could maybe help fill.
And that's what we're doing.
Yes, it's great.
Reach out to the younger kids like us.
We're still kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
This is fantastic. I love what you guys are doing. I hope that I can be helpful and support it in the future, and maybe we'll find, maybe not $1 million, but some dollars to sprinkle around to try and see what works and what makes a difference.
Yeah, and get those Stop the Bleed kits in more places.
Sure.
Because I noticed they're not everywhere.
Because they're very expensive.
Yeah.
And I feel like making donations is also good too.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time of year to get people to donate.
Mm.
Maybe we ask around a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
was great having you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to TAVA Talks and being a part of our podcast journey.
And we can't wait to have you back with us on our next TAVA Talks episode.
And remember
to always say bye to violence.